Chiropractic. Our profession has never had more opportunity. More patients are paying attention than ever before. More doors are opening for us. And yet, many doctors still feel they aren't reaching their full potential. Why is that? Often it comes down to a blind spot or blind spots. Things that just aren't as obvious as they should be, but show up in how we communicate, how we connect, and how we position what we do. So what is yours? And what can you do to change it? Welcome to Chiropractical. I'm your host, Jon Kec. Every profession has its strengths, but also its blind spots. And sometimes, the hardest ones to see are the ones holding us back the most. Today's guest has spent years identifying these gaps and helping other chiropractors rise above them. Dr. Jay Greenstein is a chiropractor, entrepreneur, and the CEO of Kaiser Health Group and EMBODI. Today, we're unpacking what's really holding chiropractic back and what it takes to move us forward. Dr. Greenstein, welcome to Chiropractical.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, John.
Well, I want to dive in and I want to start big, right? So today we're going to talk about kind of the blind spots in the profession. And let's just get the first biggest question out of the way. In your opinion, what is the biggest blind spot facing the profession right now and the individual chiropractor if they're different?
I think it's probably one and the same. And I think it's the adoption of technology. I look at life through a very specific lens, but I see what's happening not only in the rest of the world, but specifically in healthcare. And I think chiropractic as a profession has been a technology laggard. We've been behind. And I think chiropractors who are in their practices, taking great care of patients, creating miracles every single day in their practices with these two bad boys, many times are just not aware of how technology can literally change their practices and change their lives. I went to HIMSS 2 years ago with a very good friend, CEO of the Illinois Chiropractic Society, Mark Abla, and we were just blown away. I mean, the expo hall was 3 football fields large, and there was about 20,000 attendees at this event. And we're talking about worldwide digital healthcare, using technology to improve patient outcomes, improve provider income, improve efficiency, create more value. And we're just not there. So the blind spot is not adopting technology and not adopting it sooner, faster, and more completely.
I think for a lot of doctors, the problem is it's intimidating, right? We don't know where to start. So if I'm, sitting in my office right now and let's say I'm modestly tech savvy, right? I know how to log into my Wi-Fi and that's probably about the extent, my Wi-Fi and my EHR, let's say, and that's probably about the extent of it. Where do I start? What's the first best thing I can implement to really start myself in that direction of adapting technology to help me on a day-to-day basis?
I think the easiest thing to do, honestly, John, is just to download ChatGPT and start asking it questions. I totally agree with you. People are intimidated, but the way that we can get over that intimidation is just to ask the tool the questions. Now, we could go down a rabbit hole around the different tools and the different use cases. I won't do that today. But if you open up ChatGPT and there's ways to personalize your instance, you create an account, you can personalize your instance so it knows you, it knows your practice, kind of knows your values, your beliefs. And then you start asking it questions. How can I use technology to better improve my practice? What are the pain points, that the doctor is experiencing? Maybe they want to create greater patient retention. Maybe they want to have more new patients. Maybe they want to do a better job hiring and retaining A-player teams. Ask the tool these questions, and it will start to give you answers.
I think with that too, and this has been a learning thing for me over the last, honestly, couple months at this point. The AI is only as good as what you put into it, right? Both the information it draws from, it puts into itself, so to say, and the prompts and stuff that you give it. So any insight or guidance there, I think a lot of people, same thing. It's the intimidation factor. You look at AI and you say, help me build out a top-notch patient retention program. And it spits a bunch of stuff out and you're like, this doesn't apply to my practice at all. So how do we start from the start to say, hey, this is my practice. This is what I do. This is my patient base. How do we build that in so we're successful? I'll say the first time, but we're both realistic. We know the 4th or 5th, refinement is where we want to be. So
I mean, the first thing I really believe that you need to customize your instance so it knows about you. And you can even ask it. So I want to customize the instance so you know me, you know my practice. Okay. Ask me all the appropriate questions that I can answer. That will then give you the feedback that I put into my settings section, my customized section of the settings, so that you'll know exactly how to give me outputs that will be relevant to my business. And to your point, John, we know that It's going to hallucinate at times, and it's going to not give you all the answers that you need. It'll send you down rabbit holes many times. But if we want to ask the question, how can I adopt technology to improve efficiency, improve outcomes, improve income? I think the easiest place to start is actually with a tool like ChatGPT. Now, there's other tools that you can use and also customize, but if somebody's just getting started, that's probably where I would start.
And I think you actually may have been the one who said this. I sat in on one of your presentations in the at the TCA Taxable event, I think last summer. We talked a little bit about this with some other guests as well. Some things to be careful of. You mentioned hallucinations, right?
Yeah.
What exactly do you mean when you say hallucinations?
Well, the tool will make stuff up if it doesn't know the answer.
Okay.
And what's hilarious about these tools is that like it makes it sound like it knows the answer when it really doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just making stuff up. So that's why you want to use different use cases or different tools for different use cases. So I'm looking at the scientific literature and I want to understand, the impact of remote therapeutic monitoring on patient outcomes. I'm not using ChatGPT. What I'm doing is I'm going to Perplexity because Perplexity has scientific references that are in the output that I can double check. I can just click on the link, it takes me to PubMed and I can see the reference. So again, the use case is important, but these tools will hallucinate. If you ever create images and you don't give it a great, to your point, that like a bad prompt, right? It'll give you some really wonky stuff. So what I often do, John, is I will actually go to ChatGPT and be like, I need to create an image for pregnancy-related low back pain that I want to put in a Google ad. And I tell it to write me a prompt so I can create an image that will give me the best output that I can then use in a Google PPC ad.
Okay.
So I'm asking the tool to give me the prompt, which will then give me the end result that I'm looking for with the output. And again, it does take iteration, it does take patience.
Yeah, I remember your example of that. You were, I think, on the top of a mast of a sailboat, and it looked like you were. And it was definitely not Jay Greenstein. Let's put it that way.
So just so the audience knows really quick, because it's kind of a funny story. I was just playing around with a different tool. I wanted to create a video and I just want to play. And so I said, give me a video of Dr. Jay Greenstein on his 100-foot, yacht in the Mediterranean. And it gave the most bizarre image and video, like this dude who looks like he's from Italy and ended up wearing a bikini bottom and a half shirt. It was just the most bizarre thing, flying through the air, right? And I
Fantastic example though of
yeah,
exactly what you can get out if you don't give it good prompts.
right. And my prompt was lousy, right? It was terrible. I didn't upload a picture of myself. I didn't even upload a picture of my dream yacht. So it does hallucinate. And one thing that I just want to add to that, John, is that I always tell people who are just getting started utilizing these tools is that you want to learn about and then play and then implement. So playing is the key word there. Just play it. Don't take it too seriously and just learn as you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Refinement is definitely the thing that like I said, I've seen over the last few months as I've started to change kind of the method I use and asking it to ask me questions, that is, to really kind of clarify the point. I think that was a big thing. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So as we start to kind of get that stuff taken care of, right? I think one of the other fears people have with technology and AI, we're a very face-to-face business, right? We are hands-on with our patients more so than almost anybody else. And I think the fear is with technology, we lose that personal touch. So how do we ensure communication stays strong? What are some points maybe to consider there, both with our patients, but also as healthcare globally becomes technology-based, more so than it is today? How do we stay interconnected with other professions, referral sources, things like that? Communication slips quickly, I feel like. But
it's such a great question because at the end of the day, it's the combination of this human emotional intelligence plus artificial intelligence that actually will help people be the most successful.
Sure.
So nothing is ever going to take the place of the in-clinic visit. I really believe that. Maybe someday there'll be robots doing adjustments, but I doubt it. Not probably in my lifetime, right? So I think the beauty that we have as a profession, unlike computer engineers and data scientists, maybe they're doing great, but other computer developers, code developers, like those people may be losing jobs because AI is happening so much faster. But for us, like people need to come in and they need to get adjusted. Like that's just it. We have this beautiful thing that we deliver every single day to our patients. And I don't think anything's going to take the place of that. But if we're stuck doing a bunch of admin work or we're stressed out about staffing issues or we don't understand our finances well enough and we're focused on that instead of being present in the room with the patient while we're actually in the room with the patient, then how do we use technology to get past that? I was literally in the next room meeting with my CFO and we were going through financials, and we were having Claude analyze all my financials and then provide, detailed recommendations with context from my CFO around like, how can the business be even more profitable? And so like, if that happens so much faster and I don't have to even think about that stuff, I walk into a room, I'm just happy to see my patient. Now I
Yeah.
could just go in there and I can communicate. And here is where I think technology becomes next level. I can actually record myself having a conversation, and a couple of things can happen. One, we have AI tools now that can actually document the entire encounter. So the days of like clicking like on computers and for soap notes, like those days will be gone, I believe, in the next 12 months, at least with the EHRs, that are out there, and the EHR that I use, which is Clinic Mind. Like they've already built, I've seen what they've built,
Sure.
and it's just really remarkable. So I'm excited for my doctors because they'll no longer have to worry about typing notes at the end of the day or at the end of a shift or whatever. So there's that element, but there's another, I think, deeper element, because you mentioned, the human connection piece. And I think that's so insightful, right? I actually am now having my doctors record conversations with patients that we can then upload with a scoring system around what are the strategies that need to be included? What does empathy sound like? What does motivational interviewing sound like, which is an evidence-based form of making sure that we understand patients' goals, like uploading all that information so that my doctors can then get scored and they can improve their communication skills even more. And that's where it gets next level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. That's honestly the first implementation like that I've heard of, but I love the idea.
I got to give a shout out to my buddy, Dr. Alan Miner, because he actually came up with this strategy first about listening to calls and scoring them, and he was doing them manually. And we were having a conversation. We're like, we know that we can do this with AI now. And
Sure.
so that's where both of us, we've been working on.
I think back to my days in student clinic, I guess it was, or maybe just before, right? We had those monitor treatment rooms or exam rooms, I guess, when we were doing it on each other, right? No
Yeah.
patients in the room, no HIPAA violations here, just working with other students. But those recordings, and we dreaded them. We hated them. You hate to watch yourself back, but I
Yeah.
think there's so much value in doing it, which is exactly why we did it. It's exactly
Yeah.
why we hated it too. You see all the awkward stuff you do, all the unusual stuff you do. You have to pick it apart, but there's so much growth and learning there. That's awesome. I love that idea as a way to really refine your approach, because you just don't know what you don't know you're doing, and how weird that can be sometimes.
Exactly. And to your point, watching yourself like nothing replaces that. That's where probably the deep learning comes from. But if you can contextualize and make that learning more organized so that when you read through the framework or the feedback and then you watch yourself, you've just got much stronger context. And organizationally, it makes more sense to your brain. And you're like, oh God, I can't believe I just like picked my nose in front of that patient or whatever. Right. I can't do that. Right. So again, these are just some of the use cases where we can combine human intelligence and artificial intelligence in the same world.
I think that starts us down a bit of a vein as we start looking at bringing technology into the office. We've talked a bit about how it refines it on our side. It frees up some time. It takes care of the back office stuff, the business planning, whatever it may be. What ways are we seeing really it impacting the patient's day-to-day experience? How is it changing what they're seeing in an office?
Well, according to the data from HIMSS actually did a fair amount of research on this, and they were really looking at, what are patients expecting nowadays from their overall healthcare experience? And 93% of the patients they surveyed are expecting a digital healthcare experience, some level of digital interaction with their provider. And 90% say they would switch providers if the experience wasn't good. We know from one of the vice presidents of Best Buy, because I literally saw her on stage at HIMSS talking about this, that 32% of Americans are wanting a majority of their healthcare to be delivered at home. So why is Best Buy talking about this? Well, instead of installing, home theaters, now they're installing Bluetooth-enabled healthcare devices where physicians can monitor their patients at home. And this is especially important for the elderly.
Yeah.
Like, my mom doesn't want to go schlepping to the doctor. If she wants healthcare, she wants to be able to do a telehealth consult to get some sort of advice, over the computer. So this has changed the ways in which patients expect healthcare delivery. And now that we have remote patient monitoring or physiologic monitoring, we can look at people's glucose levels, or their blood pressure, their weight, all of those things, or we can look at their movement patterns, or we can collect patient-reported outcomes data on a regular basis, where we know how the patient is improving in their healthcare journey when they're not in the clinic. So we can provide interventions when they need it most, when they're not in the clinic. We can improve outcomes, we can improve retention, and we can improve loyalty. And that builds a healthier society, but it also builds a much healthier practice. So again, these are things that I'm passionate about. Obviously, my technology company does this work. That's what EMBODI does. But we know what the data says. And what's really interesting, John, and then I'll shut up about this, at least until you ask me the next question, is that policymakers have made it very clear that this type of technology, like, for instance, remote therapeutic monitoring, is really important to save total healthcare costs. They're willing to actually pay providers now to save downstream costs. So just at the beginning of 2026, CMS created 2 new CPT codes that greatly reduced the billing requirement to provide these services. And so before requiring patient-reported outcomes, it was 16 by the patient in the given 30-day month. The patient has an app and they're reporting back to the provider how they're feeling. You could bill a CPT code, if the patient reported 16 times in the given 30-day consecutive period.
Okay.
Well, the federal government said, let's reduce that requirement. Let's align incentives. Let's make it easier for the patient to do and the provider to get paid. Now, for this new code they created, the patient only has to report 2 times to the provider in order to get paid the same amount of money. And so same thing with the time requirement. So the provider can get paid for the time that they're spending, but instead of having to do 20 minutes of time spent for a patient in a given calendar month, now they only need to provide 10 minutes of time spent. So they reduced the requirement by 50%. So why do policymakers do that? Because they know that if patients and providers take part in digital health interventions like remote therapeutic monitoring, total healthcare costs go down, morbidity goes down, mortality goes down, and the system wins. But most importantly, the patient wins.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Have you guys implemented anything specifically in your office in that realm, remote patient monitoring or anything else that you've seen firsthand experience with so far?
Well, because I'm the founder of EMBODI and it's a remote therapeutic monitoring platform, our clinics a little bit. Our clinics are basically our laboratory. We have a clinical research institute as well. So we publish our data as we collect it. We just published in the Journal of Contemporary Chiropractic earlier this year on the first pilot study on, the data that was in our clinic, improve retention and improve revenue. It didn't surprise us. We've seen this data before. And so for us, we've been able to scale this to other early adopters who are ready to accept remote therapeutic monitoring. They're not the people that have never used ChatGPT before, right? Like, our avatar is the person who really understands technology and the importance in building a practice and understands where healthcare is going. So yeah, it's been great to see our customers adopt this technology and really drive better outcomes and actually improve income as well.
I think you just mentioned driving where healthcare is going. Let's talk about that a little bit. So
Sure.
maybe 2 parts to this question. Feel free to tackle them in either order. What do you see happening over the next 5 to 10 years as technology advances? What advancements do you see? How do you see that changing the chiropractic office? But also more broadly, and maybe a bit of a hot button topic for some, our integration into the larger healthcare system, right? How does that change the chiropractic integration into the larger healthcare system as technology changes, if we do, and if we don't evolve with it?
Yeah, great question. So I will take this in a multi-layered approach. Let's talk about the profession itself first. We've many people still don't know, but the profession has a strategic plan. It's called Chiropractic Future Strategic Plan. You can go to chiropracticfuture.org and you can look at all the data around how we started, the surveys that we did, the data we collected, and then of course the plan that we've implemented. We are building what's called the DASH, the Data Aggregation System for Health. We have multiple work groups. The research work group headed by Dr. Heidi Havik. Brad Cost, who's the CEO of Infinity, has built out this data lake on his own dime. And what we're doing is we are building an infrastructure to collect aggregated data so that we can understand the impact of chiropractic, the value that we create, and then publish that data at light speed. Publishing that data then informs policymakers and the general public about the healthcare choices they need to make in order to stay healthy. I believe, and I haven't really looked at the data around this, but since COVID, I think the general public, at least in America, has been like, you know what, the standard medical model is not really working to keep us healthy. It is a sick care model. What do we need to do now? And so I think with technology, with the advent of technology, publishing more data, the use of tools that can monitor patients remotely, artificial intelligence, where patients can get smarter about the healthcare decisions that they're making based on the evidence when they're searching not Dr. Google, but Dr. ChatGPT or Dr. Perplexity or whatever, Dr. Claude. The system and the people in the system are going to get smarter. And as we get smarter, they're going to make better healthcare decisions. That's actually our mission at EMBODI, helping people make better healthcare decisions. And when we make better healthcare decisions, we create a healthier world. That's where I see us going. I think people are just going to get smarter.
Well, and I think you bring up a fantastic point, right? We look at our phones, we look at our wrists, we look at our scales. Everything is so much more robust than it was even that 5, 6 years ago when COVID first started. Right?
Yeah.
There's clearly been a shift in what's available. And the reason the shift in what's available is because the shift in what's demanded. Right?
Yep.
And we see so many other independent companies that have popped up with all this blood testing that you can do beyond and outside the healthcare model system that we currently have. There's got to be a reason.
Yes.
So all of that is becoming bigger and bigger. So, maybe more specifically, where can chiropractic really tie into that? What do you see as a big opportunity for the profession or the individual doctor going forward as all of that stuff continues to build? Because we are more of that whole health model already. How do we capitalize on that?
Again, I think where it starts is the adoption of technology and the use of artificial intelligence to for the doctor to be able to ask themselves the question, how do I position myself and my practice to thrive in this new environment of the world of health tech? And I think based on the individual provider, they're going to get some really good answers and some insights around that. And they can think about that in the context of the business life cycle, which is talent acquisition and retention, building A-player teams and being able to retain them. So how are you building a practice culture that actually can deliver amazing service to your patients? We know there's a statistical correlation between employee engagement and patient engagement. So if we want loyal patients, we've got to build a great culture. So that's the first, area where providers can start to think about the use and implementation of technology. The second one is operations. What technology do I need to incorporate so that I'm not having people doing mundane things? I'm paying people to actually create even more value in the practice. And then the third part is, marketing. We all have to market and sell. That's just what it is. Even if you're just doing a great job in your practice, that's marketing in and of itself, getting great outcomes and experiences for your patients. So understanding the marketing strategy and helping to grow your market share. The last study that I saw was the Palmer study. 14% of the population is seeing a chiropractor in the last 12 months. 49% of the population had never seen a chiropractor, even though neck and low back pain historically is the top area of disability worldwide. And then that fourth area is just the clinical realm. Like, how am I adopting and utilizing technology, getting smarter in order to deliver even better clinical results for our patients? And it's about upping the bar in each areas of the business, of that practice life cycle. And when we're using technology, we're becoming smarter, we're upping the game, we start to create even more impact for the communities that we serve.
So let's take a step back maybe to those four kind of realms you mentioned, right?
Mhm.
Building out your team, your practice environment, building out your operations, building out your marketing, and then patient outcomes and impact. As somebody who is coming into this fresh, never really dealt with ChatGPT or Claude or anything like that, if they're looking at tackling AI, where would you recommend they start? Which of those four categories might be the easiest one for somebody to kind of get a good prompt around, really understand the information coming back that allows them to get a good footing underneath them for their first try?
There's a couple of different options, I think. A person, again, after they customize their instance, and I've talked about that earlier,
Sure.
so that the tool knows you, I would always start with talent first.
Okay.
From the great book by Jim Collins, Good to Great, it was like, that chapter number 2, first two, then what? So it's always about the people on your team, always. But somebody might have a more painful use case. Like, maybe it's their marketing that's like crushing them, or maybe it's their operations that's making them crazy. Maybe they want to really focus on clinical outcomes. So you could just ask the tool, given its knowledge, this is an area of pain point for me. This is what's happening right now. This is where I'd like to be in the future. These are my future goals. Give me a prompt to ask the tool how to solve this problem, take care of this opportunity, and be able to leverage technology in a way that's going to give me, the practice of my dreams, and let it build you a prompt. And then you just follow that process of, looking at the output, possibly needing to iterate it, and then ask it for an implementation strategy, because it'll give that to you as well.
And put you on the spot a bit.
Sure.
Let's role play. Let's say you're a doctor, you've been out for 5 to 7 years, right? You're out of that new learning phase. You've got your practice open. You're just not where you want to be.
Mhm.
So you're approaching ChatGPT for the first time, 30-second, 3-minute, whatever it needs to be. Give me kind of how you would prompt it, how you would introduce yourself, how you would build out your profile, so to say, within ChatGPT to then say, and I want to maximize my team, and here's what I'm looking for. So for people who have never done this before, how would you approach it for the very first time?
Okay. So if I've just opened up ChatGPT for the first time, what I would do is I would create my digital avatar. So I would copy about 20 emails that have significant length of thread so it understands my communication style. I would
Okay.
take, of course, no PHI, it's not HIPAA compliant. So
Sure.
no patient protected health information. I would take several text threads that I have with, close friends, but no, really private text threads.
Sure.
I would take snapshots of my calendar for 2, 3, 4 weeks. You can just take images of those. Um, I would, any bios that you have, website links, to your practice website, anything that can instruct that tool about you, your beliefs, your core values. If you've got mission statement and core values written down, if you don't, you need to. That's where really it all starts. But I would incorporate that into the digital brain or the digital avatar of the doctor, load all that in so that it then creates this digital avatar of the provider. Once it knows you, then I would, based on the pain point, let's say they need more new patients. I would first start with, based on what what's out in the web, give me an analysis of my practice. What do you see as my practice brand? Give me a competitive analysis of my main competitors in the area. Who are they? What is their value proposition? What are their differentiators? Give me a chart or a matrix that shows me where we excel or where we are showing up, let's say first on Google searches or number of reviews. Where do they compare? Give me a full competitive analysis. And again, I might prompt it again to be like, give me a prompt to give me a competitive analysis, right?
Yep.
It's because my prompt may not be good enough. And then it would give me outputs. And then I would ask, based on all that information, if I got what I needed and I understood my brand and my competitor's brand, okay, give me the next steps in order to acquire 10 more new patients a month. What are the things that I can be doing? And it's probably going to give you 20 different things that you can be
Yeah.
doing. And then you might say, you know what? I'm not interested in doing meta ads, but Google PPC, pay per click, that's something that I think would probably get me a better return on investment. And you know what? I love talking to physicians about chiropractic. So that's a strategy I want to use as well. So
Okay.
you pick 2 or 3 things and you're like, now give me an implementation strategy on how to maximize just these 2 or 3 things. What steps do I need to take? What are the resources that I need? How do I grow my brand utilizing these tools that is differentiated from all these other brands? And then it'll give you an output. And then you just refine it more until you've got a plan.
Okay.
Also, John, I would highly suggest that you do this with your team. Don't do it in isolation. Right. Exactly. And also them seeing how you're thinking, what your thought process is, your problem solving skills, human intelligence with artificial intelligence starts to get them thinking. Then they might have additional ideas as well as we're getting the outputs. And now you've got multiple brains and artificial intelligence is really driving great results for you.
Yeah.
I hope that was helpful.
No, absolutely was. And I want to go back to one of the things you opened with, the core values and mission statement. Completely different than we're talking about here today. But
Yeah.
I want to stress how important that is, and I want to give you a chance to. I mean, we've touched on very briefly everything you've got going on, and it's a lot for our listeners and viewers that don't know. Check it out. There's a lot of really amazing stuff we're not even talking about that Dr. Greenstein's doing. But when you go back to core values and mission statement, why is that so important? And if somebody doesn't have one, why do they need to honestly start there before you even tackle the AI? Like you said, start there and make sure that's your guiding principle. Why? In your opinion?
So John, how much time do we have? No, I'm
Just in
kidding.
that same
I'll, I'll,
second three,
I'll,
take your pick.
yeah, I'll try not to ramble, but I'm really glad that you brought that up because, NCMIC has this amazing culture. I mean, I can say this with the most amount of authenticity and truth. Like, I love the people that you have on your team. I mean, I have so many great relationships. Starting with Lou Bertelli and Wayne Wilson and all the others, Emily Wood, who I've known forever, and we're on the road together, and she's an amazing person. I mean, I just had these great relationships. And the reason why I have these great relationships and why NCMIC is such a great company is because they understand the importance of building culture. And if you're not clear about who you are, what you believe and how you behave, how do you possibly build the culture that's intentional? So it all starts with your core values and your mission statement. So we take care of our own. That's the NCMIC mission statement. And they do, and they mean it in multiple ways. They take amazing care of their employees. They take amazing care of their customers. I know because I've been one for the last 34 years. So understanding who you are, what you believe, and how you behave is the guiding principle. You said those words, brilliant. It's the guiding principle or the guiding principles of literally like your business.
Sure.
And so so let's say I start first day as a chiropractor, I've got no team. I've got an office, I've got a chiropractic table, I've got my hands. Now I want to bring somebody on to help me. How do you know who to bring on? Is it just somebody who knows how to answer the phone or input data into a computer? Those are skills. What we care about are values. Do they align with our core values? Are they willing to do whatever it takes to overcome challenges? Are they reliable, honest, trustworthy, authentic? Do they love people and love to serve? Like who are they? Who are they intrinsically as humans? Because you can have somebody that has great skills, and I've made this mistake many times. You hire somebody that's got great skills and they don't align with their core values and it's a train wreck. But when you hire somebody that aligns with your core values, like you said, everybody's now on the same page.
Yep.
And so it just, the business runs better. So, the core values, and again, you can use, LLMs to help you do this, but you can say, ask me questions to help me identify my core values, because typically the practice owner is the one who's guiding what the core values are for the business. Again, if you have members of your team, it's really great to include them on this exercise, because many times a business owner, we all have blind spots, me especially, I've got plenty of blind spots. We think that we're behaving in ways that align with our core values, and sometimes we don't. And so that's the opportunity for our staff to kind of call us out and be like, well, that's a core value of yours. Like, that's fine. We can make it a core value, but you've got to behave this way as well, right? You've got to live it as well. So yeah, I could talk for hours about core values and mission statement, but it is the foundation. I'll say one last thing. Whenever you have a performance issue in your business and you're talking to another human, at least for my business, I always will tie it back to the core values. So let's just say a simple one that a lot of chiropractors deal with. We've dealt with it. Somebody's showing up late for work and it's become a chronic problem. And I would say, so Joe, how does showing up late for work align with our core value of synergy, which is really all about working really well within a team? How does that align? Help me understand. And what are they going to say? Most will say it doesn't. And I said, well, help me understand the impact that you showing up late has on the rest of the team. What is the impact of this behavior? And then third, I'll ask like, okay, so what can you commit to moving forward? And if you can't commit, do you understand the consequences? Which is you get a performance improvement plan. It's a 30-day opportunity to improve your behavior. And after that, you don't keep your job.
Yeah.
So again, it all starts though with the core value, right?
Sure.
We're calling out their behavior tied to the core value.
Yeah.
So it's not about me anymore. It's about the value.
Yeah. I think that gives us our second and maybe third blind spot, right? I think largely, I don't want to overgeneralize here, but I think largely a good number of people have never done that. They've never sat down, both personally and professionally, and taken a look at those things. So they don't know when they've kind of lost that guidepost. So then, third blind spot is they don't know they're not living what they think they're living, and that perception they're trying to get out to their community and their practice and their employees and whoever it else may be isn't the same as what they're actually portraying.
Yeah.
So, I didn't intend to take us there, but I think it fits.
No, I love it.
It's another huge blind spot that I think a lot of people need to consider. And honestly, maybe even should have been the first thing we talked about, because like you mentioned, if you're going to build out all this AI profile stuff, that's kind of where you're starting.
100%. One of the things that I just want to say really quick is that I said earlier that we know statistically employee engagement ties to patient engagement. And if you have loyal employees, you're going to have loyal patients. You can do very simple things like what's called a 360, where you can survey your team and ask them, what's my greatest strength? Where's my area of opportunity to improve the most? And how can I support you better? Those three questions, you send it out on a Survey Monkey. It can be anonymous or not. That's really up to you and your team. And then you get that feedback, and then you sit down with your team and you discuss it. I do this every single year. All of my I get reviewed, and my leaders get reviewed as well, because we all have blind spots. We're humans. Of course we have blind spots. And so we get to learn from that experience. You could also then upload that data back into one of these models and get even greater feedback. And one thing I'll just say, one more time about blind spots is that when you're using these models on a regular basis, they really start to understand you. So there are even prompts that are out there that will give you the down and dirty on really what you're doing. I did this recently with Claude, and there was a prompt that I saw on Instagram. I put it in there. I put it in Claude and ChatGPT just to compare.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was, John, when I tell you it was a light bulb, I was like, oh crap, I do that. That is so true. And if I'm going to get to my next level as a person, as an entrepreneur, I need to fix that.
Yeah.
And so just that level of awareness, and we know that in the scientific literature as it relates to business, great leaders have great self-awareness. In the spirit of self-awareness, doing 360s with your team and really asking these models to evaluate you can be extremely helpful.
Yeah. That's a tough mindset to get into, I think. The openness to that feedback is the hardest part, right? Crafting the surveys is easy. Sending out the emails, easy. Being able to internalize and take that feedback, tough. So good on you for doing that, for sure.
John, you have a lot of emotional intelligence. You've got a lot of human intelligence. What advice would you give people to do? Like, why would it be important for them to do? Why take that leap?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and thank you for that. It's taken a long time to get here. I definitely remember my younger self, and for being honest,
me too.
But I think it's kind of what we talked about already, right? When you really look at that kind of stuff and you truly evaluate yourself in a way where you're not to sidetrack us. This popped in my head before and I was going to ask about it, so I want to throw it out here. It's interesting that we're willing to take that feedback so quickly from AI, from Claude, from ChatGPT. But if you and I did it to each other, it would be a whole different ballgame for most people, right? Taking it from a person, very different than taking it from an AI.
Yeah.
But so take it how you need to take it. But the ability to sit down and truly look at that kind of feedback, I think really does give you the opportunity to, like you mentioned, understand, one, who do you want to be? Who do you think you are? And two, who are you really? And how do you get to marry those two things together? And without doing that, I think you're rudderless, for lack of a better word. And you have success plenty of times. You have failure plenty of times, just like everybody else, but you don't really know why one is one outcome and one is the other, until you actually have a guidepost in the middle that tells you, like, this is the direction I'm going from here. So having that ability to sit down and look at that is, I agree with you, huge. And taking that feedback is even harder, but even bigger.
I love that answer. There was a lot of knowledge bombs that came out of that. Rudderless was something that will stick in my brain now forever. So thank you for that.
I appreciate all the conversation today. I'm going to ask you one last question that I feel like we've asked most of our guests here recently. If not, I think it's probably going to be my last question for almost everybody. We've talked about a lot of future stuff, right? The current developing technology and where it's going in the future, but technology or not, if you sit down and look at the profession right now and the future of chiropractic, what gives you the most optimism for the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Well, again, I said earlier that I think the general public is ready for us more so than ever before. But I also think that the profession is more united than I've ever seen it. I think, being on the Chiropractic Future Strategic Plan, being at the Chiropractic Summit meetings, having a meeting in Washington, D.C. with major policy makers that, tie back to RFK and HHS, now is our time to really create some impact. And I do believe that there is a loud minority on kind of both sides of the profession. I'm talking kind of the vitalistic versus the, we'll call them the scientists, the scientific. True. I shouldn't be using air quotes there, but I did. Sorry, y'all. But like the vast majority of us agree on the vast majority of things as it relates to chiropractic. Sure. And I think with the advent of technology and improved, abilities to communicate and all the things that happen on social media, which can be distracting, but can also be really powerful, I feel like we have the best potential that we've ever had to really unite our profession in one common mission, which is to be the choice for healthcare for patients around the world. And we're not going to fix everything, John. You and I both know that. But at the end of the day, we can get people well, and we can keep people well. And I think we're going to see that explode within the next 5 years.
Thank you for the positivity. Thank you for the perspective. And thank you for a lot of very detailed conversation on how to get started with technologies and AI. I appreciate all your time today and always enjoy talking with you. So thank you again.
It was a blast, John. Thank you so much for having me, and love to all the people at NCMIC. Thank you for all you guys do as well.
Dr. Greenstein, that was incredible. Thank you again. Really appreciate you being here. And for everyone listening, the biggest takeaway today may not be some new technique or strategy. Maybe it's this. What if the thing holding you back isn't the thing you know, but it's how you're showing up, how you're communicating, or maybe how you're being understood? Because when that shifts, everything else can too. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and share this podcast with a colleague. It'd be great if you could leave us a review as well, as it'll help more chiropractors find us here at Chiropractical. Be sure to watch the video version of this podcast on the NCMIC YouTube channel. If you have any questions for us or the show, you can email me at jkec@ncmic.com. I know we talked about a lot of stuff here today. Links to most will be in the show notes below, so check there first for more information. And thank you again for listening. I'm Jon Kec, and this has been Chiropractical.